Started today. Hi, I'm Mary Beth Harrison with the Dallas Native team, and welcome to our live show. And my trusty sidekick here, Candace Barnes, is joining us today. Today, it's all about you guys. It's your questions, and I get asked questions daily by my buyers and my sellers, and I kind of come to a point where if one person asks the question, then probably more people have the same question. And I don't know about you guys, but when I'm buying something substantial, like a computer system, for example, or a new TV, or it's it's the old, I would have asked that question if I had known to ask it. And that is a pet peeve of mine because as the salesperson of that TV or that computer or that house, I would hope that you would anticipate what the questions you should have been asking. What information should you be gathering before you make a decision to buy that TV or that computer or that house or a swimming pool or anything else? You hope that your salesperson anticipates what should have been asked and answers it before you even knew to ask it. Hope that makes sense. But I hate being in a position where I didn't know I couldn't update my computer, or I didn't know my computer wouldn't do wouldn't handle Word or a Excel spreadsheet or whatever else I need. That's your job as a salesperson to tell me that, to warn me that, oh, by the way, this is a really great computer, but you're not going to be able to do A, B, and C on it. So it's the same thing with the house. My job is to help you through the process and answer the questions that you should be asking before you even ask it. So with that in mind, I threw it out there for what are your questions. Some I'm bringing to the table because I get asked a lot, and then Candace has a list of questions. So between us, we're going to knock this out. So I want to start with one that I get all the time, and especially with out-of-town clients, and that's homestead exemption. In Texas, we have what we call homestead exemption. What that means is this is your primary house. This is the home that you live in and will be living in, say, 6 months or more out of the year. It is your primary home. You are not taking a tax exemption on any other home, and certainly not any other home in Texas. So let's say you have rental property, for example. But this is my homestead. This is the house that I live in all the time. This is the house that I'm going to get the property tax deduction because it's my homestead. My rental properties, I don't get to do a homestead at all. I pay the top amount of taxes, property taxes, for that house because it's not my homestead. The law, as of right this second, now it's sitting on the governor's desk, but right this second, you cannot file homestead until you have lived in the home. Basically, January 1st of 2022 will be the next availability to get homestead. So you need to have owned it December 31st of 21, following over into January 1st of 22. Then you can file homestead on that house. And it won't show up until you're ready to pay your taxes at the end of 2022. It just normal homestead drops your homestead, your property taxes, not quite 20%, but that's a good number to focus on. So let's say taxes are 2.7% in the Dallas area. So if you have a $100,000 house times that 2.7%, that's your tax rate. And then drop that by 18 to 20%. That's the amount you would actually be paying for your homestead. If you are 65 or older, or if you have a disability, that's an additional deduction for your property taxes. It almost cuts them in half and freezes them. It doesn't freeze your school taxes, but it does freeze your city taxes. The cool thing about that is the day you turn 65, that day you can file 65 homestead exempt, or the day that you become disabled, you can file it that day. Whereas a normal homestead exemption, you can only file it January 1st through, I think, March 30th is usually the deadline. With COVID this year, it changed a little bit, but Typically, March 30th is your deadline to get that done. So if you bought a new house in 2021, January of 2022, you're going to file your homestead exemption. Now, on the governor's desk is a law that would make homestead immediate. So let's say you buy a house today on September, I don't even know what day it is, September 22nd or 7th, September 22nd. If you closed today, you could file homestead today. Now, that law still has to pass, and that's going to be a really great law if it does pass. Like I said, it's passed all the outstanding. Yeah, it's got to be now signed into law by the governor. So that's something that the Realtor Association worked really hard on to try and get that passed. So that kind of settles homesteading and how that works. So that's a question I get asked a lot, and especially my out-of-town clients. So what's the next question? Bring it on.
You ready for your questions?
You bet. Bring it.
Okay. I got a lot of questions that were sent in. So
okay. I reserve the fact to say I don't know, but I'll get the answer.
Okay. First question was, how should I prepare my house before selling it?
That's a great question. So I just did an interview on this for another organization. So look at your house through the eyes of a buyer. That's my first suggestion. Go across the street, go out your front door, go across the street, and look at your home. Is it inviting? Are the bushes cut back? Are there flowers during seasons that you can have flowers? Is it attractive? Is your front door clean? Does it need to be dealt with? Would you buy this house? I mean, really, that's the question. You're going to have to take off your I own it house hat, put on your I want to buy this hat, and would you buy your own house? Then let's walk inside. Is it dark? Is it dreary? I was just at a house yesterday. It's painted dark chocolate brown. It's like a dungeon in there, especially in the hallway where there's no windows or light coming in. It is just midnight in there. Buyers buy what they see. So if it's just a matter of let's paint the house, then let's get it painted. And probably the most important is just clean it up. Do you want to walk into a mess? No, you don't want to walk into it, and yet you do every day. So clean it up. You've made the decision to move, so pack it up. If you're not going to need it in the next 30, 45 days before you move and sell your home, then pack it up. If you have to trash something out, let it be the garage. If people can't figure out that's a 2-car garage, then I can't help them. I'm out. I can't help these people. So put your boxes and all that, stack them neatly, and put them in the garage. If you have another place you can store it, that's great. And if you don't have a garage, then find your largest room and start putting them over in a corner, or take a bedroom you're not using and neatly stack them in that room if that's what you have to do. But first and foremost, just clean it up. Appliances that you use once a year do not need to be on your kitchen counter. You don't need to keep your bread and your cereal and your spices on your kitchen counter, because all it says to a buyer is, there's not enough room in this house for these things. There's no place to keep bread. There's no place to keep my spices. Well, is that true, or do you just keep them out there? So you don't want it to look like you don't have enough room for stuff. So put it up. Make your kitchen counters as free of things as you possibly can. Now, I get your coffee maker. Absolutely, you want that out. Your toaster, if you use it every day. But again, if you don't use your toaster, put it up. Get it out of there. So just have on your kitchen counter what you really use every day. Otherwise, put it up. And if you have a pantry, it's a perfect place to put that stuff. Just get it out of the way. So clean it up. All those magnets that are on your refrigerator and the kids' drawings and your invitations, you're using it as your office. I mean, seriously, get all that junk off of your refrigerator. Your refrigerator needs to be a refrigerator. So I just want clean, neat, and I'll walk through the house, and any agent that you work with should be honest enough to be able to say to you, you've got a lot of furniture in this room. This is really a great size room, but it's looking really scrunchy right now. Why don't we take that table and that chair and let's get it out of here? A bedroom, same thing. Do you really use that chair in your bedroom other than cram clothes on it every day that you don't put up?
Oh, those dirty clothes.
Yeah, those. It's like your exercycle. Here, let me hang my clothes on that. I haven't ridden it in years. It's the best hanger in town.
Exactly.
Those handlebars on those, they're great. It's just that. Clean it up. If I can suggest to you that you spend $10,000, whether it's on paint or carpet or whatever, and I can get you another 25, 50,000, then that's a conversation worth having. But if spending 10 only gets you 10, it wasn't worth it. It was not worth it. And quite frankly, there comes a point in every house where you can't do enough to make enough difference. Painting it will only show how bad the carpet looks, for example, or changing the carpet will only show how bad the paint looks or the furniture looks or whatever. It's okay that your furniture is older. It's okay. Let's just arrange it nicely so that people can think, what's my stuff going to look like in this house? How am I going to live in this house? And let's get you and your personality out of it. Does that answer that question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay.
And I will say, whenever Mary Beth and I do come in to come arrange a house, we will move things.
Mm-hmm.
Like things might appear in multiple places throughout the camera.
That's right. We'll get a flower arrangement and we'll move it over here. Exactly. We'll move it over here.
So don't worry. Because a lot of times we'll remove everything, like she was saying, everything off the counter, including some of y'all's decor. Even if the decor is really nice and everything else, it might look nice whenever you go in, but the camera really focuses in on certain things. So you really want everything to be very clean.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we don't hesitate to go through and find a colorful, pot or something to fill up a space to give some color to a room that's otherwise very, very plain.
Absolutely.
And it's okay that your house needs everything. We just sold that house that they had lived there for 46 years.
Right.
And I think they had changed only the carpet. I think that's all that had ever changed in this house. And I don't even know how old that carpet was. And it's
still original cabinets.
Yes, it sold
everything
very quickly with multiple offers because it was such a good house.
Right.
It just needed to be brought back to the 2020. It just needed to be brought back to the 2000s. That's all there is to it. But it was a great house. So it's okay that your house isn't updated or done. It's okay. At the right price, anything will sell.
Correct.
Yeah.
Should I order a home inspection before putting my house on the market?
Oh, I feel so strongly about this. I think a pre-sale inspection is imperative. It's so important because first of all, we check our teeth, we check our cars, we check our health, we check a lot of things, but we never go back and look at our house. And especially like on a pier and beam house, meaning it's sitting off the ground, it's on piers and you can crawl underneath, it has a crawl space. I've had inspectors go under there and there's been a leak that's been going on for a long time, a really long time. But I'm not crawling under my house. I don't know that. So it's so important because when you go to sell a house, you fill out a seller's disclosure, which is everything you knew about the house. And then the inspector does his inspection, which is everything he knew about the house. It allows you as a seller to go repair it or replace it if you want to. And maybe you don't want to, and that's okay. You can sell it with whatever it is broken. But if you're handy, go put some duct tape on it. I don't care what you do to make it go away, but make it go away. Once we go under contract, first of all, the buyer's hysterical. No, it's got a leaky whatever. Oh, it's got a, whatever plug that's missing. It's like they get hysterical. They come back and ask for it. And now you have to have the plumber, the electrician, the roofer, all of your tradespeople have to be involved. You're not allowed to do repairs on your own once you've gone under contract. So the first way around, you can get it fixed very inexpensively. And now we take that inspection report, we write repaired, replaced, whatever it is you've done to clean up that inspection report, and we give that to the buyer. So now the buyer is negotiating with more knowledge about your house than any other house that they're buying. And what a comfort would that be for you as a buyer? Wouldn't you want all the information? Now, that's not going to preclude a buyer from doing their own inspection, and nor should it. They should do their own inspection. They should do their own due diligence, because that inspector worked for you, seller. They did not work for the buyer. So the buyer should come in and do their own inspection, but now you're not going to find the biggies, the roof, the water heater, the air conditioner, those biggies, you've already taken care of that. So yes, I feel very strongly about doing a pre-sale inspection. Absolutely. It has served me well over the years. Yeah.
Okay. That helps out a lot. Okay. So I know this is going to be a really hard question to ask because DFW is really big. How long is it taking to sell a home right now?
That's a good question. I'm seeing a lot of homes stay on the market longer than they were. I think average days on market was about 27 last month or month before last. And is still today, if it's priced right, if it looks good, it should sell. I'm thinking 15 days, 15 showings. If you don't have an offer, very quickly you're getting the message you're priced too high. I'm seeing more price reductions now than I have seen in a long, long time. Two reasons. I think some sellers have gotten a little greedy and they think, oh, well, theirs sold for that, so mine should sell for this. Really? Should it? I don't know. That house was drop dead to die for. It had all the new stuff and the granite and the paint and the whatever, had a swimming pool, yours doesn't. So it's not an apples and apples thing. You've got to kind of make a case for each individual house and what it brings to the table versus the other one. But I mean, none of our listings have lasted very long at all this year. I mean, not even 5-10 days. I mean, I would be almost hysterical if it lasted 10 days right now. It's been a long time since I've had one last for a long time. So I don't know if that answers your questions, but 30 days at a minimum, and whatever day it sells, say it goes under contract, you're about 30 to 45 days to actually close. So if you take everything into account, easily 30, 45 days for the whole process to come together. But as far as going under contract, in my opinion, price it right and you should be under contract within the week. I mean, I just think that's the way of the world right now.
I'm seeing that too, just by looking at some of the stuff that's going on, is the things that are priced more at that, like kind of right under the price point, they're getting like multiple offers, and then their sales price I'm seeing is a lot more, versus the people that priced very aggressively, they almost had to do the price reduction and they're getting less on their sales price than the people that went lower and then their price went above. So it's kind of interesting to kind of see that dynamic.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's, and that's really the whole thing. Let the buyers establish what the price is. What's it worth to them? That, excuse me, that house that 46-year-old people had lived there for 46 years, that went for multiple offers. And I set a very reasonable, I certainly didn't give it away, but it was a very reasonable price. Because another way I look at it, let's just say it was going to take $100,000 to get that house to today's standards. So, okay, let's back it up. So then we need to sell it here so that whoever buys it can do the work and still be within the market. Right. So there's many ways to look at pricing. If it just needs paint, carpet, and wallpaper, you're probably talking $10,000, $15,000 to make this house wonderful. So, what's it going to take to get it there? So I look at it for my buyers. I look at pricing for the way it is now. What would it sell for if it were done standing at attention? What would it sell for? Well, there's your checkbook. Do you think you can get it done within that checkbook? There's your answer. There's your answer. So, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that's one thing too to kind of note before you guys start doing any type of repairs or anything, or additions or updates, call first to say, okay, this is what I'm thinking about doing. That way we can kind of look at the neighborhood and go, this would be a good thing to put your money in, because compared to this other house that have sold in the last 6 months, this is what they've done. So that way you're not doing too much. So that way you're not recouping your costs out of that.
Right. But the flip side of that is if you're going to stay in the house for 10, 15, 20 years, and who knows? I mean, honestly, in this day and age, if you get the best job offer to go work in Albuquerque, then, who knows? Maybe you only stayed there 2 years, but your intent was to stay there forever. So just, none of us know what's going to happen. I mean, look at last year. None of us know what's going to happen next.
I think all of us at this point, none of us know anything.
No, I think we've all learned that we don't know.
With none of us. We don't even know what tomorrow is going to hold. Yes.
Exactly.
We're living for the day.
But, in some instances, it's what you wanted. It's what you loved. It's like putting in a pool. He who puts the pool in is going to spend the money. You're not going to get dollar for dollar. So say it takes $50,000 to put a pool in. Probably not far off. 30 to 50 is probably not far off. But did you enjoy it? Did your family enjoy it? Did you all get use out of it? Did you love having it? Then who cares? Because that's the bottom line. Nothing is sadder to me than when my clients, my sellers look at me and go, wow, I wish we'd replaced this carpet years ago. This is wonderful. I mean, how sad is that? You did it to sell it and you didn't even get to enjoy it. So, if it's something that's going to bring you enjoyment, then go do it, go do it.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't wait till you need to sell the house. Like, go ahead and actually do it so you can enjoy it for those many years as you can, and then you can sell it. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. This is a question we get all the time. I see your emails. Is what is the selling price of my home, and what is a good resource to get that price? And there is a company, I don't know if you want to name that company or not, that everybody uses, but people go on that site and then they look at their price or what they think is going to be their price. You want to kind of explain the reason why on how we assess a home and the reason why these sites are not a good assessment of their home.
First of all, Texas is not a disclosure state. So all anyone knows, including the records building, is what you borrowed. Now that is recorded of record, is how much you borrowed. So let's take a $300,000 house that you put down $100,000, then $200,000 is all that's going to show of record. So our internet sources starts with a big Z. They have what they think your value should be, but we look at actual data that says these homes sold for this much money in your condition. The internet doesn't know what condition your home's in. I mean, logically, assuming your home was beautiful, almost brand new inside, it should sell for this. And so they'll do an evaluation of this, where when we come in and see your home, your value's down here. So it's all well and good to go to those sites and kind of for fun and see what they say. But the reality is, your home is only worth what someone's willing to pay for it. It's that simple. And so we go off of what have other people paid for a similar home. And when I do a market analysis for our clients, I look at every single home and every single picture and every single write-up and get as much information as I can so that I compare apples to apples instead of comparing apples to steak, because that's nowhere the same, right? Or even worse, comparing apples to an airplane. It's not the same. So yeah, we go to very factual information where they are going to kind of pie in the sky thoughts.
And I have seen the prices completely be so overinflated as to be over $100,000 overinflated to be under $100,000 undervalued.
Yeah.
So it's really and truly, it's better to not use those websites because, again, they're not going to be accurate data.
I want to continue on that same thought process, because something else that's really frustrating, and maybe it's one of our questions, I get calls all the time going, it's online. And I'm like, it sold a year ago.
Correct.
So these sites make their money, and the only way they make their money is to come after realtors for us to advertise. And so when one of our properties garners a lot of interest, it allows that agent, whoever paid for thousands and thousands of dollars a month to do this, it allows them to, it looks like it's their listing. And so they'll get a call. We've had listings stay on there for
8 years.
Yeah, because it got so much attention. And so the sellers couldn't get it off, the buyers couldn't get it off, our brokers couldn't get it off that site. It's really, really frustrating. And then we get the call going, I want to see 1234 Main Street. I'm like, wow, that sold 6 months ago. No, it says right here it's active. And so those sites are really, really frustrating. So when you're really ready to start buying a house, watch what sites you use. Realtor.com is very accurate. Or Ebby.com is very accurate. It changes every 15 minutes. It updates every 15 minutes.
Right.
So watch who you use. There's some good sites out there, but there's some really bad ones. So
there are.
Sorry, I probably got off on a tangent on that one. It's such a pet peeve of mine.
Well,
anyway.
It's something that's a constant weekly issue.
It is.
Especially people that are ready to buy, they immediately get on those sites to go look for, comparable properties and kind of what they're looking for and everything else, but not really knowing that the data that they're looking at is so inaccurate. And it's frustrating for people too, because especially if they're wanting to move and then they're like, oh, well, I found this house.
And I love it. I love this. This is my house.
Yeah. And it matches everything that I'm wanting. And then we have to tell people, oh, well, it closed 2 years ago. So that's very frustrating.
Yeah, it is frustrating.
So let me get to our next questions.
And if you all are sitting online with us today and you have questions, please jump in and put it in the chat box.
Yes,
we'll be glad to answer it. So don't hesitate to jump in.
And I really appreciate all your all's questions. This has been phenomenal. These are
we got these. We put out a call going, what's your question? And this is how we got them. So go ahead.
So what is the first step in buying a home?
Find a realtor. Honestly, I mean, that really, and that I know that sounds very self-serving, but we direct traffic. That's what we do all day. We have great lenders that we work with. We have lenders that will get the job done. But more importantly to me, my lenders that I work with explain so well to my buyers what and why and how and what if we did this, what if we did this, because should you put down 20%? Maybe not. Maybe you're better served keeping your money in your investments or whatever they're doing right now with interest rates so low at under 3%. Maybe you're better served putting less down and having your money saved over here. I don't know. Maybe that is good. Maybe it's not. But I expect my lenders to talk you through that. Why do an FHA loan? Why do a conventional loan? Why do anything, right? And so if you get to a realtor to start with, first of all, they can just start to narrow down what you're looking for, because we've talked about this before on this show. Dallas is a huge geographic area, humongous geographic area. And when you take into account, when I say Dallas, I'm taking into account Collin County, Rockwall County, Denton. It's huge. So when you say I want to live here, it's like, help me out here. What do you need to be close to? Do you need, where are you going to be working? Because if you're working downtown, do you really need to live up in Prosper and Salina, whatever, and make that 2-hour drive every day? And maybe you do. Maybe that's okay with you. But at least let me give you options, because the cool thing about our city is you don't have to live that far from things. So do you want to be close to your recreation, or do you want to be close to your work? Do you want to be close to schools? What's important to you? And then a realtor can help you kind of narrow down what you're looking at instead of this gargantuan area. And so it's things like that. Is it reasonable that I'm looking to spend $300,000 and I want a 3,000 square foot home? No, that is not reasonable. And no, you will not find it in this city. And wouldn't you be better served to know that up front and get your expectations right? Well, what is a 3,000 square foot house? I mean, what should that cost? Well, in this area, it might cost this. In this area, it might cost this. In this area, it might cost. So there is no one size fits all here. So your first step in that is find a realtor and find someone whose personality you can live with, because you're going to be living with us for a little bit. So find someone who you trust, that you feel like is giving you good, solid information, and let's go from there. A good question is, how many houses do you sell a year? Because do you want the person that sells 5 houses a year or the person that sells 105 houses a year? I don't know about you, but I'll take the person that sells 105,000, because the person that sells 5 doesn't have a clue. They don't get out there enough to know what the rest of the world's doing. And then engage a lender. That's really important. So a realtor, a lender, your time frame, and then start looking for a house within that time frame. Mm-hmm. So if, for example, your lease isn't up until January, well, we don't need to be seriously looking until probably middle of November, December, in order to close by the end of the year, because we want you to get your homestead, to be, out of your lease by whatever. If it's January 30th, then we want to be looking in December so that we can find it, get it closed, say mid-January, get you in your place. So again, backing our way into it, what works for you? What are your needs? What are your wants and needs? And that's our job, is to fulfill that, to help fulfill it.
Absolutely. Okay. The next question is, should I sell my current property before buying a new one?
Well, can you afford both? That's the question, is, will a lender loan you money, or maybe you have cash, in which case, of course, you can afford it. But let's assume you need to get a loan. Will the lender loan you on house number 2 before you sell house number 1? That's the question. And once we get that answer, and most people can't, majority of America needs to sell house number 1 before they can buy house number 2. So we put house number 1 on the market, and you should immediately start seeing people looking at your house. And if you don't, then price is wrong. We screwed up. We priced it incorrectly. So you should know very quickly how much activity your house is going to get. And again, I go back to the 15 days and 15 showings. We should have an offer. So let's say we put your house on the market October 1st. It goes under contract to close first week in November. So we take that time from the time yours goes under contract, we go look for houses. Now, the good news is a lot of our buyers are very flexible on their time frame. Maybe they're month to month on a rent. Maybe they're coming in from out of town and can give you the time. So let's say we close on October 31st and you lease it back from them for a couple of weeks while you move into the next house. I also call it the domino effect. If you're buying a house that has furniture in it, those people have to go somewhere. And your realtor should be making a phone call to find out what's their situation. When do they need to be out? Well, they're building a home and it's not going to be finished until November 15th. Well, so we know that we're going to close this house and give them a lease back until the 15th, right? That's what they need. Or towards the end of school, we see this all the time. People want their kids to finish the school year. So they put their house on the market, say in April or May, but they can't leave until June 3rd. So we know going in, let's write the contract correctly. Or maybe we don't close till June 1st, get them out in June 3rd. I mean, there's a lot of ways to work it, but communication is a huge thing. Let's just get down to that.
Yes.
Let's find out, what does that seller need? But sometimes you're buying my house and it's furnished. I'm buying their house, it's furnished. They're buying their house, it's furnished. So every one of us needs to give every one of us a couple of days at a minimum to get out, right? We can't all domino and close on the same day and levitate and move on the same day. It's physiologically impossible. So let's go to the furthest end. We've got to give them 2 days to get out, which means I need 4 days, which means you need 6 days, which means you need to lease back for 8 days. That's all part of what a good realtor is going to do for you, is look at a bigger picture than just you and your sale. It's a
Well,
bigger.
and let's not talk about too, on how many remote closings that we do weekly. I mean, there's a lot that we've got to close the seller in New York, and then the buyer is at work and they can't take off work. So then we have to get notaries to each person. So, I mean, really and truly, communication, like she was saying, is key, because that way the lender knows that we've got to get docs a day before
Mhm.
to make sure that everybody can close the day of. So there's
Right.
a lot of things, a lot of
moving parts. A lot of moving parts. Yeah, it's like a chess game. You should move people around on this board until we get it all to work. But the chances of closing and moving in on the same day are about slim and none these days, unless you bought a vacant house or new construction. And then absolutely you should be able to buy it and move in. Absolutely. But more than not, it's not going to be a close and move on the same day. It's pretty much probably not going to happen. It doesn't happen very often with us. We don't have a lot of vacant houses these days. And I get, from a seller standpoint, we've talked about this on this show, I get why you are scared to death to put your house on the market, because then where are you going to go? But just know that a lot of our buyers right now have the time. They're renting, they can go month to month or whatever. They have got the ability, the flexibility, I guess is the right word, to give you some time to go find a house and move. So there's ways to make this work, guys. I mean, I've been doing this for a really long time, and I've never left anyone homeless, ever. Which is amazing after 30 some odd years that I've never left anybody homeless, but I
it does
haven't.
all work.
It just all works. It just does.
Should I do a final walkthrough?
So you just froze up on me.
Oh,
Let's do it again. You kind of froze up.
sorry about that. Another question, should I do a final walkthrough?
Oh, absolutely. You absolutely should walk through the house before you go sign on the dotted line, because once you sign on the dotted line, that house is yours. Mm-hmm. And anything that was wrong or happened between this day and this day is yours to deal with. So let's say the movers went to move the refrigerator and scraped across the wood floors. I mean, we've seen it happen. That's the seller's responsibility, but only if you find it before you close. Once you close, and I think you sign a paper at the closing table that says, we, the title company, did not walk through this house, and so it's yours, including the seller leaving furniture and stuff inside your house. It's now your house. And that stuff is yours unless you choose to give it back to them. So it's really important that you do a walkthrough before closing and make sure. And we had a mover put a hole through a door one year. Yeah, I mean,
we've had some really weird stuff. We had a seller paint. Do you remember the green wall?
Yeah.
We had a seller paint a wall green. We're not even sure
why. Yeah.
But it was a dining room wall. I will never forget. And it was like lime green. And she decided that, and it wasn't our seller. We were representing the buyer. Thankfully, Mary Beth was at the walkthrough, and they painted the wall lime green. Not sure why. And then we had another one. I remember this was years ago. They were supposed to repair the sidewalk. Do you remember this? They were supposed to repair the sidewalk. Pour new concrete, because the sidewalk from the street to the house was like moved. Instead of doing that, they painted the concrete gray, so you could still, I mean, it's still all wonky as you're going. It's just painted.
It's now gray. It's gray wonky now.
I mean, I will never forget getting out of the car and calling you and going, so.
Yeah, and two, we've had them take the drapes. We've had them take drapes and blinds down, and per the contract, all that stays with the house. Right. And so those are things you need to know. What can go wrong will go wrong. It's just that simple. And so you want to make sure that what you signed up for, worse, what you're paying for, is actually there.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, doing that final walkthrough before closing is key.
And honestly, if you, for whatever reason, you were out of town and you flew in to close, then you go ahead and sign and close, but you have the title company hold your money until we leave the table, go do the walkthrough, and then call them and go, we're good to go. Go ahead and fund. And that's okay too. You can do that too. But just don't allow money to change hands until you've done a final walkthrough.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We get this question a lot, especially whenever we've got new buyers. How does earnest money and option money work?
Oh, that's a good question. So when you go under contract, you're giving the seller or the title company for the seller X number of dollars as earnest money, meaning I earnestly really, really, really want your house. And I'm willing to lose this money if for whatever reason I don't show up at closing on the day of closing. That's really what you're saying here. So we've given them usually it's about 1%, but that's not a hard and fast rule. It can be any amount of money. And the more money, the more earnest you seem like you are about buying this house. So earnest money goes to the title company, as does option money. Texas is a state that you cannot have an option contract, and I'll explain that in a second, without some consideration. So there has to be some money that changes hands in order for you to have the option or the to terminate for any reason within blank number of days. So let's say we go under contract on a Monday and you're going to do your inspections and whatever else, and you get in there and do inspections and it's like, wow, the air conditioning's not good, the roof is suspect, the electricity, something's wrong with it, the disposal doesn't work. I mean, whatever. The laundry list is really high and some big stuff. And you're like, you know what? I don't care if the seller does fix this stuff. I don't want this house. So you get to walk away for any reason within, say, 7 days. You lose that option money, which is minimal, say $100 to $300, whatever, but you get that earnest money back. So let's say you've given them $3,000 of earnest money and $300 of option. You lose the option money, but you get your earnest money back. Many times during the contract, it says, if this doesn't happen, the earnest money will be refunded to the buyer. So if you can't get clear title, or you can't, trying to think of other things in the contract that say,
Insurance.
or can't get the house insured, then the buyer would get their earnest money back. So the earnest money is kind of sitting in a holding place saying, I really want your house, but all of these things need to happen. And so that's what earnest money is. And then the option money, like I said, can go away. Now, that doesn't keep you from asking the seller to fix the air conditioner, the roof, of course you can ask them to fix it. But sometimes, not very often in my lifetime, but sometimes there's just so much wrong with the house that you're like, wow, if all of this is wrong, what else didn't they take care of? It's just a maintenance issue. What other surprises am I going to find as we live here? So it doesn't happen very often. And at the right price, you wouldn't mind buying this house with the air conditioning and the roof and at the right price, that's not a problem. But you paid this price thinking everything was going to be great. Where we really see this a lot, Candace, is in homes that have been updated. We get some of these remodelers that come in, and I call it putting lipstick on a pig. They just come in and cover stuff up. They think pretty paint and pretty countertops will wow everybody. Those are the very houses we expect to be in good working order. And often we find that they have really skimped a lot of corners.
We do see that a lot. Yeah.
Remodelers that we don't know that kind of decided, I think I want to redo a house.
Yeah.
And it looks really pretty on the surface, but when you start digging into it, it's like, there's a lot wrong.
Well, and then they've done all the pretties, but they didn't replace the 25-year-old AC unit outside.
Right.
Or they didn't replace the roof that's also 25 years old. So or the water heater, they've left all those appliances, which for our buyer, those are very expensive things to do. Yeah. Where, I'm not saying that painting a house isn't expensive, but compared to replacing an entire AC unit or things like that, that's going to cost our client, our roof, it's going to cost our client a lot of money.
And that is another point that I say to buyers, you're looking at the pretty. I'm looking around the house to see, structural and whatever. When my sellers look at me and go, but it's got a new roof and I've got a 2-year-old air conditioner and I've got a new water heater. And I'm like, those are maintenance items. You don't get a lot more money, although you should, because those are very expensive. You don't get to charge a lot more money because you kept maintenance items maintained or replaced. Unfortunately, what you get money for is the pretties, the kitchen, the bathroom, which, like you said, paint's cheap in comparison to a new roof. Yeah, it's like, watch what you're watching for. So, yeah.
This is an interesting one. How many houses should I view before I purchase?
There's no answer to that, guys. I've shown one house and it was their house. And you just know, I know that you kind of want this to be a business decision, but it's not a business decision. It's an emotional decision. And when you just know. I mean, this is going to sound so hokey. Y'all are going to never watch this show again. But I can walk in a house and sometimes know that there's been no laughter in this house for a long time. The house is just sad. It just is. It just feels sad. And don't even ask me to explain that because I can't. It's just the truth. And then there's houses you walk into and you just feel like you've been wrapped up in a warm blanket. It's just loving. It's homey. You could see yourself sitting in front of the fireplace. It's just a feeling, guys. There is no logic to this. It's how a house makes you feel. And so I can show one house, I can show 20 houses. There is no number here. It's finding the house. And sadly enough, you see a house and you think, oh, I'm going to think about it. Well, in the days you were thinking about it, it sold. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes we don't get to have the luxury of time to think about it. We have to, and nor do I want to shove something down your throat. So don't get me wrong, but when you know, you know. And,
well, I thought it was interesting. We were talking on Monday, you had an open house at one of our listings on Sunday, and you said one of the people that had pulled up in front of the house, they got out. They hadn't even been in that house at all. They were standing in the front yard, and she said, "This is my house." Mm-hmm. She hasn't even seen the inside at all, but it was the emotion that she had as soon as she got out of the car. She immediately felt attached to this house that she's never even seen till that moment.
Yeah. And then got up in the child's room and told her child, he said, "This is going to be your new room." Yeah, they didn't get the house. They didn't put an offer in on time, but.
Yep, see, I mean, I'm telling you, people, it's like, if you see something, you need to get on it quick. Because you're not the only person that's seen the house.
No, unfortunately not in this market right now. With inventory as low as it is, it's just frustrating, kind of a frustrating market right now.
It is. Yeah. And I hate delivering the bad news to people. I'm like, I'm so sorry, but you
didn't get it.
Yeah, it is. It's hard. It's not something I want to be able to tell people the good news. Like, I don't want to tell people the bad news, but guys, just know that it's like, we don't want to deliver that bad news either. It's hard on us too, because we've gotten attached to you and your emotions, and it's hard on us too.
Yeah.
We feel like we've lost the house, even though it's not even our house. We actually feel like we've lost the house.
Exactly.
Believe me, it's devastating for us on a daily.
Yeah.
So speaking of, if they've lost, what happens if people decide to back out of buying a house?
Okay, that's a good question. So you have that option period. Let's just say it's 7 days. So you have 7 days that's your first out, because you don't owe anyone an explanation. You don't have to call the seller and go, "Oh, I didn't like the purple carpet." You don't owe them an explanation. You just get to sign a piece of paper, a checkbox. I terminate under this paragraph that says I can terminate under the option during the option period. Let's say we get a week before closing and I don't have any more outs in the contract for you, and you just, maybe your boss came in and said, "Hey, I'm transferring you." Crummy on that boss. He knew darn good well you were buying a house. Or whatever. For whatever reason, you can't close. We had someone that lost their job a
The
couple of
day
weeks before
before.
closing. Remember? Yeah. And so the lender wouldn't loan. I mean, you can't loan on someone that doesn't have a job. And the lender is going to make a phone call, by the way, guys. Your lender is going to call your employer the day before closing and make sure you still have a job. So you can't lie your way through that either. So that's important. They check your credit one more time, and they call your employer. Go back and remind me about not spending money.
Yeah, well, I was
Let's
just
go back
thinking the
about that.
same thing.
Yeah, exactly. So let's go back to that. But so we get a week before closing, and I have no more outs in the contract for you. Per the contract, the seller can sue you for specific performance or keep your earnest money, not both. So typically, the seller just wants your earnest money. That's why you put it there, was a little placeholder that you're going to buy this house at some point down the road. So that's what that money's for. It's to compensate the seller for keeping their house hostage for what, 30, 45 days.
Mhm.
They've not been able to sell it to anybody else. They're out also. Maybe now they can't buy their house for all you know.
And then that person, you've created a domino effect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah. And then as far as I want to go back about spending money. Once you start looking for a house, and certainly once you go under contract, do not go spend huge amounts of money. Don't go buy the refrigerator, the car, it changes your whole credit score, guys. And also, the lender wants to know why big chunks of money came into your account all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. It's okay that grandma left you, $20,000. That's okay, but where did grandma get it? So they just don't want to see unusual action in any of your accounts. So they don't want to see a huge expenditure, and they don't want to see a huge amount of money coming or going out of your account without an explanation. But once you go under contract, do not let anyone run your credit. Do not. Every time someone runs your credit, it drops your credit score a little bit. Now, not a mortgage. If you go to mortgage company number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, it does not ding your credit. And that was a new law that was passed many years ago to allow you to go shop for the lender that you want. So if you're buying a car, you can shop cars. If you're buying a house, you can shop the lenders, but don't go from car to lender. From car to house. It's just, don't let anyone affect your credit once you've gone under contract. That is really important.
And we see this a lot with sellers. They know how much money they're going to be getting at closing. Yeah. And so they're in the process of, okay, I want to fill up my new house. Like, I'm going to sell this house. This is how much money I'm going to be making on my new house. I'm going to go buy my new car. I'm going to go buy my new furniture and all my appliances for the new house. And are like, no, you can't do any of that. We have to wait. One, you don't want to spend money you haven't made yet.
Right.
We haven't sold your house. You are in the process to be sold. So
what if that person that lost their job, let's go back to that story. Exactly. Now you didn't close. Yeah.
Yes. There is a reason why you don't spend money you actually don't have.
Yeah, life happens on the way to life. Yeah,
it does. Yeah. So if you're thinking you're making $100,000 on your clothes, I've seen it happen before, because they've already gone to Nebraska Furniture Mart and they've already, looked at all their furniture. They're filling up with this new house, and don't do
that. I think we have time for one more question.
Okay. So this is kind of a 3-part question.
You saved the hardest one for last for me.
I did. So I'm going to send this all in once, okay?
Okay.
They were asking specifically about realtors. How does this work? Full-time, part-time? Can somebody request to look at your real estate license? And what is it like to work with a team versus a single agent?
Well, those are really good questions. So, do you have the right to ask? Absolutely. Part-time agents, I mean, bless your heart, I understand. I really understand how life goes right now. But what part-time does your client want you? I have some people who can only look during the day. And then I have some people who can only work or work with me after work. I do as much business after 5 during the day as I do during the day. Sometimes some of my clients can only work on the weekends. So what part-time are you going to be available for them? Because nothing's more frustrating for me personally to need something or need someone and not be able to reach them or not be able to get an answer. That just infuriates me. I'm like a 3-year-old. I mean, what are we going to do now? Well, what about now? Well, what about now? That's me. That's my personality. And I'm assuming that's your personality. So I don't fault a part-time agent. I mean, please understand that. But I just think that's really hard on your clients. And then as far as working with a team, there is too much to do in this business now. It is too paperwork intensive. It is too time intensive. It's just too much. And so if I'm having to show you houses and sell you houses and write the contract and get you through inspections and worry about, did your contract get to the title company? Did it get, is the lender doing their job? Is the appraisal been ordered? Has the survey been done? And if I'm having to worry about all of that on top of taking care of you and every inch of your life, I'm spread so thin. I mean, let's take peanut butter and just start spreading it on a piece of bread. The ends never get as much as the center, ever. And so where do you want to be, the center, or do you want to be on the edges? Something's going to fall through the cracks. It just is. And I know for me, I sell a lot of houses a year. I mean, we're 75 plus houses to the hundreds a year. If I did that by myself, while I'm listing a house and taking care of my sellers and buyers and what you just can't do it all. And so I know Candace and I have been together for 16 years now. And we've been together a really long time. We don't finish a sentence because I already know what she's getting ready to tell me and she already knows what it is I'm getting ready to ask her. We rarely finish a sentence. We just we know. But I also know for a fact that my buyers and my sellers are being outrageously taken care of. I mean, incredible customer service. And that's really all I care about. I want to know that their questions are answered. You can call me anytime, but she's sitting at a desk. Yeah, she's sitting at a desk with a file folder and she has just talked to the lender where I'm out showing another house. So I'm probably going to get on the phone and go, hey, Candace, tell me what happened with the lender, because she's the one that just talked to him. So it's not that I'm not involved. We meet every morning to find out, what's happened, what's going on, where are we with this?
And we talk all day.
All day. So it's not that I don't know, but I'm one of these people. Let's go back to that personality. I want someone to answer that phone right now, and I want an answer to the question. Well, Candace is your source for that. I'll get to you, but it'll be after I'm off the phone or after I'm out of this appointment or whatever, where she's sitting at the desk all day long. And then as far as a buyer specialist, that's all he or she does. They just work with buyers. They stay on top of the market. They know when you say I want to be under 300,000, where's that house? North, south, east, west? Where do you even find a $300,000 house? Where's a $500,000 house? If I was going to spend $1 million, where would I spend it? Where would be a reasonable place that I would be surrounded by equal housing? Because I'll be darned if I want you in $1 million house in a neighborhood that also has a $300,000 house next door. That ain't going to fly. So those are the kind of things that a buyer specialist keeps on top of. If you want a house in Richardson, I just showed these 3 houses. They were wonderful. Let's go look at them. So it's that kind of thing that they are very, very good at just keeping up on the market. And then there's those of us, I work primarily with the seller. So I keep in touch with what things have sold for and what to do to make your house appealing. Now, I also work with buyers, so I can keep on top of what buyers are looking for. That's important. It's important for my sellers to understand what makes a buyer go, that's really cool. So that's why we form teams, so that there can be more. I can only take so many buyers. That's just only so many hours of the day. And once you go under contract with our group, it goes straight over to Candace, and she dots our I's and crosses our T's, and she makes sure nothing falls through the cracks, and that closing date says October 20th. By God, we're going to be at the closing table on the 20th. So I don't know if that answered all of the question. Was there another part of it? But
No, that
that's
answers. And I just want to kind of add, especially with the part-time agent, I mean, I get it in our time right now, but our contracts are very date specific.
very time
And
specific.
I oftentimes will be calling Mary Beth because we're not representing one side or the other. And I haven't gotten amendments from the other agent. I haven't heard from the other agent. I've emailed the other agent, called the other agent, text the other agent, and no response at all. And it's her responsibility to get that amendment to us, but I haven't heard from her. And so
amending a contract, you can never rewrite a contract.
Yes.
Once a contract's done, it's done. But you can amend it with a piece of paper that says, instead of closing on October 20th, we now need to close on the 24th. But that's got to be written, because remember when I said if you don't close on the right day, the seller can take your earnest money? Yeah, you're in default. If you don't close on the date that the contract says, you're now in default. They can sue you and they can take your earnest money. So do you want to put your buyer or your seller in that position? Of course you don't. So someone needs to draw up a document that says we need to change our closing to the 24th. Do we all agree? Because we all have to agree. Because the seller goes, oh, I'm going to be in Europe. I can't close on the 24th. I have to close on the 23rd. Yeah. Well, now we know that. So we can make arrangements for that to happen. So it's just, you got to stay on top of that stuff, or you've put your client, whether it's a buyer or a seller, in jeopardy. Right. So it's someone that's not on it all the time.
Yeah. And that's my thing is I always am asking them, are you going to be here? Are you not going to be here? And sometimes they won't know until the week before. Yeah. So I go ahead and put everybody on notice to go, our client travels. So please understand that they may or may not be here. So the lender already knows that. So that way they can prepare his team to get docs there early. So there's, like I said, however you're going to work, and whether it's a team or an individual, just know that to make sure that you know those dates, you know when the survey needs to come in, you know when the HOA dockets need to come in. There's so many dates. I think we counted, there's 96 touches from the time that somebody goes under contract to the time we close. That's 96 times that something has to be done to a specific contract. That's not even beforehand. That's just after contract.
So you wonder how we earn our money? That's how. It's not a simple, I just sold you a house and I'm going to go home and eat bonbons and watch soap operas this afternoon. It doesn't work that way. What you all don't see behind the scenes is staggering. Yeah. And the problems that we run across that we solve before they ever get to you, because that's our goal, is for this to be a seamless, wonderful experience. So we have put out all these fires before you ever even knew there was smoke. And that's our job. That's our job, is to make this the most enjoyable thing you have ever done. I mean, you're buying a home, for goodness sakes. Or selling a home. Exactly. We want our buyers to be happy and we want our sellers to be stress-free. That's the goal. And so, I kind of go back to the person that sold 5 houses this year versus someone that sold 50 houses this year. I want to go with the person who has done it over and over and over successfully, that has systems in place, it just runs like a well-oiled machine, or as a group, we run as a well-oiled machine. So, it's not to say a single agent can't do a great job. So please don't get me wrong. There's some phenomenal agents out there. They're pedaling fast. They can only sell so many houses a year because it's only just them, but they do a great job. So do not misunderstand me by any means. But that's why those of us who formed a team, that's why we formed a team, is so that it would allow us to go do what we do at a higher level, because we don't have to deal with all this other stuff.
It's all about leveraging your time.
It is exactly. We all have the same 24 hours a day.
Exactly.
I used to think I had something different, but I found out I didn't.
I know. Well, I just
So,
want to say, I know we didn't get to everybody's questions. So what we're going to do is I will reply to everybody's questions when we get done with this.
yeah.
So that way, just know that if we didn't get to it, we're so sorry, but we had so many questions. So
Yeah.
we will
And,
make sure.
by all means, send us your questions. I mean, we will always answer them. So no, don't hesitate. You can find us at dallasnative.com. You can go to info@dallasnative.com and send us an email and we'll answer your questions always. That's what we're here for. That's what we do. So thank you so much for listening. Candace, thank you for your time today and all your good questions that you threw at me. So we'll see you guys. Yeah, we'll see you guys next week.
All right. Thank you guys.
Bye.